Hey everyone, welcome back again. Congratulations on the completion of the second hour, and with that also our stock and even the castle nut. And now we are working on the end plate, the so-called end plate, which is put right behind the castle nut, well, depending on which way you look at it. And these two elements have pretty much the same diameter to the outside. So that makes it easy for us to just take the geometry from the castle nut, duplicate it, and that already gives us the end plate dimension, at least for the upper part. And this is the type of thinking that we need to apply in a lot of cases. Because if you look at the reference image, you will see that I put a lot of numbers on there, like diameters, radius, total length. And these are all numbers that I gathered online, and that wasn't so easy sometimes. In few cases, there were simply no information at all. But then you look at it and you see, for instance, like I just pointed out, the castle nut must have the same diameter as the end plate. So that helps us. That gives us clues. And these clues are very important. And the reference research is a huge chunk of the actual work involved. I'm just mentioning that because we are already seeing the finished reference image that I put together, but if you were to work on a project on your own after the completion of the AR, you have to take a lot of time into account to make sure you have the best possible reference input, and that will help you tremendously to get the best result possible. So with that said, we can continue to work on our end plate now. And we will, after that, already start with the lower receiver. So the lower receiver is also a big one. It's pretty much what defines the unique look of that AR15, together with the upper receiver, of course. And this element, I also had to make some serious research to look into all the diameters and the numbers and the length and those things. Because if we would get it wrong just by a few millimeters, then automatically the whole thing, something would look off. So that is why we are being as exact as we can with those numbers. Obviously, we don't make a weapon that is supposed to be going to a manufacturer. It's still a video game gun that we make. But we have set the bar very high to make sure it's as close to realism as possible, despite being for a video game. And that will really sell the look later down the road once we get to our textures and our renders. It's gonna look really realistic, and that is what we are aiming for. So with that said, let's continue. Happy modeling and cheers. So let's continue where we left it off with our end plate. We still have that selection active here at the back, and we can simply delete that. And now let's take a look here at that cylinder that we have at the bottom, the bigger one. We want to delete the upper half of it, select this edge, and use Super Smart Create to put a vertex there in the center, which we then connect all the way down. And we can get rid of the left side. Now we can already start to look at our reference here and get that silhouette worked on. So now we can connect this to the other element. So let's go over to face mode, and we do want to select the fifth one as seen from the center. So make sure that you counted it correctly. And then we can simply delete these faces and also get rid of the left side. So that leaves us with this here, and we can now press Ctrl and J to join this together, and then press F to make that bridge operation over there. Well, it's actually just a fill operation, but you could also call it bridging. I'm gonna fill that here as well and connect it like that. Let's dissolve these edges. And on that edge, I actually want to make a bevel to make that a bit more smooth. And those two edges there in the center, we don't need them, so let's dissolve that. And we can continue to make connections here with Super Smart Create. I'm gonna apply a mirror to see how that is shaping up. And then let's go over here and actually dissolve these edges, because those are a little bit in the way for what I plan to do next, which is selecting this face here, and let's give it an inset, and we're gonna uncheck boundary in that small dialog at the bottom. That makes sure it's actually connected, the inset, to the other side. Now let's bring these vertex points down, and I'm gonna use scale here on the blue gizmo handle. Bring that down like that. And over here, we also have some cleanup work to do. So I'm gonna deselect the currently active selection and just dissolve the ones here at the bottom. And then we can make a manual connection over here like that and use the knife tool. So let's also connect that here at the side. And now with that face, let's give it an extrude. And this extrude, we can now go over here to our right view, and let's give it another extrude actually. And this one looks tempting to do in bevel, but I want to do something different here. So I'm gonna select this vertex point coming from there and connect it over here like that. And now we can take these edges and dissolve them and then connect it over like that. Because this shape is not one uniform bevel that we see there. This has a bit of a slope. So we're just gonna do that manually, selecting these vertex points here at the front. Use the scale again here on the red handle. And then position it accordingly here to our reference while still having the mirror on. So we see also what's happening on the other side. And the one here at the bottom, we do the same thing as well. Let's make sure we have it spaced out evenly so that everything looks great as far as our edge flow is concerned. I'm gonna uncheck the mirror because there were a few faces when we did the extrusion that we can delete. Let's put that back on. And I'm gonna switch over to face mode, put another inset on here, and again uncheck the boundary. Actually, let me do that differently. Let's do that again, and let's then press Ctrl to push it out like that. Give a bit of a bevel there. And the same thing over here. Let's make sure this is nice and smooth and round. And then we can clean up a bit here. Also known as collapsing, dissolving. And this one here as well. Make some connections here. And now let's take a look at it here from the side view. We're gonna make use of our Interactive Tools Quick Lattice once again. Finally, I'm using the right plugin. Before I had to point it out to you because I installed a different plugin, but it's the same plugin, but it's just from a different author, but it's doing exactly the same. So now I'm finally using the right one. I am collapsing that modifier and get rid of the bracket. And this one is a bit too high poly, so I'm deleting that cylinder. Let's take our end plate and reference into isolation, and let's just create that cylinder again. It's gonna be our Boolean operator. Radius 5 millimeter, and let's give it 24 sides. Rotation we put to 90. And then let's position that over here so we can actually use it as a Boolean. It's perfectly at x0, right there in the center. And let's just drag that out here, or more like in. And then let's go over to Bool tool, make a difference. And we can then apply all cutters. Let's just check our modifiers, and there shouldn't be anyone right now. Gonna go over here on the front view and just delete again the left side. And we can then triangulate these faces and right click and say tris to quads. So let's put the mirror back on. And let's take a look here at the back side where we need to make one connection like so, or actually two connections. And then we can simply select the rest like that and press F to fill. And this one, we're gonna right click once again, triangulate, and tris to quads. It just looks nicer that way, even though it's gonna triangulate it anyway. So back here to our side view, we have to align it. S, Y, and 0 will take care of that. And now we can also align it here accordingly to our reference image. And you often see me jumping in and out of isolation. I'm gonna now select the sharp edges for this element, and then let's put the crease to 1. So that should give you a look like this here. And then we can copy over from our buffer tube the modifier stack. Let's take it in isolation and let's see what that looks like. Maybe it's too sharp and we have to lower the resolution, but let's first apply the corrective smooth. Otherwise, we can't really judge it. And that does look too sharp. So I'm gonna go over here to remesh and put that to 8, the resolution. And that might actually be too smooth now. So let's put it to 9. And the corrective smooth, let's add that to 0.5, which will also make it a bit more smooth. And I think that is perfect now. So I'm gonna disable once again the stack for our remeasure modifiers so that it's not eating away on our performance. And then I forgot earlier to also add it here on our castle nut. I'm gonna increase the sharpness angle to maybe 53. And that should select all of them automatically. We can put the crease to 1 and then copy it over from our end plate that we just did, which then has the same settings that look good on the end plate, and that is a similar piece. So let's enable it, and Indeed, this is looking good. It has the right smoothness and not too sharp looking. I'm disabling again to save performance, especially when we're reloading our scene the next day, and just leave the mirror on. So let's take a look here also at our naming convention. So this is going to be the end plate underscore low. And then we can drag them in our low poly folder. And now comes the big one of the big ones. We are gonna continue on our lower receiver. We're gonna start by duplicating that end plate we just did. And we wanna go in face mode and delete all the faces as seen from left. Let's continue by making this selection and extrude it out to the right side here. And I am then positioning it over here so it's attaching or aligned to our end plate, and also position these edges here. And then extrude out another section and a second one. So that leaves us then with this piece there as a starting base. And I just want to reposition our reference that we did earlier. And I want to also lower the opacity a bit here on those, so that the white is not so distracting. But we might have to be flexible with that. Sometimes we need to see more, sometimes less. And I'm gonna make another copy here of this reference image and rotate it around minus 90 degrees on the x-axis. And then we're gonna take that piece that we just extruded out and position it here accordingly to our reference image for this particular element that you see there. So that will help us to make sure we get that shape right. You can see we already put these edges there where they belong. And now let's just reposition that a bit more here. This one can come over. This is from an actual AR15 blueprint, that reference there. So now let's just take that further down. And this one we know has 2.29 centimeters. So we can then also put a box up to 22.9. And that way we know that this is the diameter for the next element we're gonna work on. Well, this is all one element, but I'm saying within our lower receiver. So I'm gonna add that edge loop there, and I want to use the edge slide to bring that down here as much as we can to that box that we just created. Let me go back here to our modifiers and disable the mirror. And while being in face mode, I'm gonna delete these faces over here. Same as these faces. They don't do anything for us, so let's get rid of them. And now let me take these faces over here. Let's make a selection for it. And I'm gonna actually delete this. And then let's take these edges and extrude them out a bit, snap back, and then position it perfectly here on the green gizmo. Let's make another selection and copy it and separate that copy out. So that way we have another piece here. And I'm gonna rotate that around 90 degrees, and you're gonna see what I'm up to in just a moment. Let's position this down here. Position it like so. And then we select this together with the other piece and say Ctrl J to join it. And now the magic can unfold. We take these edges and then with Shift, we're gonna also select these. And we're gonna now make a connection here. Right click, Bridge Edge Loop. Bridge Edge Loop, which is a standard tool that comes with Blender. And let's work here on these number of cuts. Gonna put that to smoothness of, let's see about that, 0.48, and number of cuts we're gonna put up. We have to be flexible about that. See what works best. Smoothness 0.55. And let's also make it even higher poly there. Gonna put that to 12 segments. And now we can delete these edges. Those were just there to help us. So this is already a good starting base here for our LowerReceiver. Let's take that into isolation and let me just get rid of these faces there that we don't really need. And these ones here as well. Let's just leave it there at the entrance. At the entrance to the inside. And now let's take a look here at this cube. I'm gonna now position it here based on our reference. And the width of this cube is one of the most important things. So we already defined that earlier. Now we can just delete the faces that we have here in the center. Join that together like that. Let's just take a look at our reference, and this is the area where we're working on right now. So we have to make sure that we get that right. It's coming out there a bit, as we can see. And I'm going to copy another reference actually. I'm gonna put the opacity up on that, and I want to look at a different reference image here, which is gonna make it easier for us. So that duplicate, I'm just using the Z-axis handle. You can also use Shift to make it more smooth, or more slow, I should say. And that makes it easier for us to see on the reference the details, where on the other reference, we have this element there in the way. Let's use Shift to slightly push it over a bit to the left here. It's a little bit tricky to position it because our gizmo is not there on the reference. But let's carry on. I'm gonna add quite a few subdivisions in here on that selection. 7 to be exact. And let me dissolve the edges that we had here. And now we can go over here to the right orthographic view. And while being in vertex mode, we start positioning this here. And now you can see it's simply easier for us to see what's going on that reference image. So that's why I put a duplicate and put it a little bit in front of the other. We have to be flexible with these references. And sometimes always looking at the same reference can give a wrong impression. So the more we have to choose from, as long as it's all matching perfectly with the sizes, the better it is for the overall product at the end. So this is just all about some manual positioning here. While being in vertex mode. And now we're getting here to the bottom. So let's see how we handle that. First, let's also take this over. And then you can see that this might require a little bit further work here to make sure it's as perfect as it can be in terms of edge flow. And yeah, we're gonna take this over, and now we can work on that here at the bottom. Push that back. And I often like to go in and out of the X-ray mode, especially when it comes to this type of silhouette work. I just straighten that there, these vertex points on one axis, and now we can connect that over here like that. And this is once again gonna ensure that we have a better edge flow there. You're gonna see in a moment. Right now we're having triangles, but now we go ahead and dissolve these edges here. And that way the geometry is actually following along organically and not just like pulled from left to right. So let's go here to the vertex slide and let's space that out better. And once again, we can do that manually here. It might be a little bit too much with the angle, so let's put that back, at least there at the upper part. Here's one of these good examples where it just makes sense to work both in X-ray and jump out of X-ray. Gonna delete this edge and also these two edge loops there at the center. And now we have to connect this over here to this side, what's left of the box that we created. And we can see that this is perfectly planar there, where this is joined together. So we're gonna take this coordinate here from the x-axis from that face, and we paste it over here to that other face, followed by S, X, and 0, just for this face. And that way, these ones are now perfectly aligned and planar to each other. And we can then continue by making a selection here and adding our interactive tools quick lattice on that, because that's where it becomes a little bit tricky to ensure that this is a smooth curve. So I'm gonna change the lattice settings here, add a few more of these little handles which are gonna help us. And I'm gonna select these 4 here and then drag it over like this. So this is another great use case for our quick lattice. And this helps us to establish this nice edge flow there, where this is all looking like it's from one element. I'm gonna apply that lattice. And then we can continue here by taking these faces and use our inset. I'm gonna uncheck boundary and put the depth to 2 millimeter. And our thickness, I'm just gonna put it to 0 for the time being. So this gives us a basic block out pretty much here from our main shape where it matters, where this is all connecting towards. And we then go over here to our vertex mode while being in X-ray. And we want to align that as good as we can here over to the outer side. So that is a bit of a manual job. And the same goes for here. And that way, we can now continue to refine a bit here the overall silhouette. I'm going to go over here to our edge slide. Make sure that these distances are somewhat uniform. Naturally, we have a few more edges there at the bottom where this is all coming together. And I want to show you a plugin that we require. It's called Loop Tools, and it comes with Blender. So just enable it, okay? And we're gonna use that in a moment. For now, let's see what we can do next. I actually want to take this reference image here, as seen from our front orthographic view. And like I said before, we need to be flexible about that. I'm gonna now position it so that this is here aligned with this element on our reference image. So the more sides that we're able to look at everything, the better for us ultimately. That ensures that things are not only looking good here from our right view and top view, but also from the front view. Just gonna position that a bit more here so that this looks like it's fitting right there in the center. And now we can go back here to this element of our lower receiver, and I'm taking that into isolation together with this reference here as seen from front view. And you can tell that we require a bit of a different flow here that we're gonna do next. Let's take these faces here. And now it's time for the loop tools. I'm gonna use the flatten command. And that is gonna be followed by the quick lattice. So that way we ensure that all of these faces that we're now moving are staying perfectly flat and straight there, as they should be. And on the bottom, we can extend it a little bit out like that. This is not by accident, this is what we want, and we can even emphasize that a bit more by pushing it out here like that with our quick lattice. Let's select the upper ones and bring that out a bit. It's never gonna be 100% perfect with our reference, but we're gonna do the best out of it. I'm gonna collapse that lattice. And now let's take a look here at it from our right orthographic view. We're gonna select these faces, S, Y, and 0 to make sure it's perfectly straight. And we take the edge loop there at the back and push it over a bit. And here on that side, we're gonna do the same thing with the edge loop that is coming down there. And that, once again, will require a bit of a manual cleanup. Let's compare it here with our reference image. And you can see that when you look at these edges, you already get an idea for how it should look like. Good topology. This is crucial for the overall result, and we just want to make it look like this is all one flow. Because if it looks like that, it is like that. And that is another case here for our X-ray mode, because otherwise we cannot really see what's there in the back. But like I said before, it's important to toggle around a lot. Make sure we see the overall thing without the X-ray, but also how it holds up against our reference under it. Let's select these 8 faces here. And let me just go into isolation here with our reference. And I want to be using the flatten command once again. Because before we were moving some vertex points, and that can easily then make it a little bit uneven. So I'm using that again. And now we're gonna make use of proportional editing now. Select this face and activate it. Press G. And now page down. You can see my radius there at the upper left. And we bring it to around 15. And now with that face, we can simply massage it a little bit more here according to our silhouette, so that this looks better than before. This is now based on our second reference, and I think this is actually more realistic that way. So once we're done with that, we're gonna get out of this proportional editing again. Put the mirror on. So now let us continue by going back here to our editing mode. And in X-ray, we take then these vertex points. Make sure you're out of the proportional editing. And let's then align it here on the Z-axis. So before we connect that, let us add an edge here into the center of this main face that we have here on the right side. Let's bring that up. So you can see that this is perfectly aligned here on these edges. Let us connect it. Same then here for these edges. So with that, let us select the full loop here with Alt and left mouse button. Let's zoom in here and let us connect these vertex points. Now we can go over to edge mode. And let us then also go over here into the edge slide mode. So let us do that. Let's then bring that up a bit here around there. And let's then give it a bevel with 2 segments to have this spaced out evenly here. Let us not connect too many vertex points there because we will have to add more Boolean operations there, as you can see here on our reference. At the moment, all that matters is that we have it connected. We need to also consider that this piece on the top is perfectly flat. This piece right there. So this is where this is coming together there at the top. And we already have the correct size for our Picatinny rail. So this is the Picatinny rail that is attached onto the upper receiver. And we already have our coordinates for it here. And this is another important clue that we're gonna add now, even though it's already the upper receiver, but that helps us. 15.67. And then we take that cube and position it here where we know that this is the right place for it to be. And then we can use that as a reference for when we have to flatten here. This should be at 0. Let's take these vertex points, x 0. And now we also already see it here on our reference. We're gonna take these faces together with these ones here. And then we're gonna align it by pressing S, Z plus 0. So now we drag that up and pay attention here to the upper right on the Z axis. You can see where I put that, just so that we're on the same page. S, X, and 0 here for this. And then we align it here with that cube, which is a part of the Picatinny rail from the upper receiver and is an important clue for us, like I already mentioned. Let's add edges here in the center of these. And then we position it over here and bring that down a bit. So we're gonna take it like that. And here on that side, we can bring that down a bit. It might not always 100% align with our reference, especially if the reference is based on a picture. However, we have a lot of these coordinates where we know the length. And speaking of length, I changed my mind here on this cube. Let's look at it here from our front view and add a bit more of a length there. So I'm going to put that to 36 on the x-axis. And that way we can then also adjust here our lower receiver, the upper part. Bring that out a bit more there to the side. Press Shift to be more precise. And yeah, that is basically just a cube that helps us a lot. And we're going to continue by taking some of these informations that I gathered here and make a block out. We're going to start with this cube by putting it to 28.5. I'm going to go to Edit Mode. Drag that over. It doesn't have to be 100% perfect yet. But what matters is the 28.5. And this one, we're going to copy and make that copy a 35.5. Now we go back here to this element, just the side here of our lower receiver. Go to Edge Mode, press Extrude. Snap back and bring that here to this point. We're gonna drag more geometry out there with extrude and then drag it over here. And now we can try to be as precise as possible. Extrude further. And remember, I like to extrude, snap back, and then use the gizmo. Let's delete that inside cube. So now we're only left with a 35.5 cube. And I understand that this is a little bit tricky right now and maybe a bit confusing, but it'll add up. We just have to make sure to be precise here with these numbers. I'm gonna drag more geometry out here, add an edge loop here in the center, and then we can take these faces and extrude it over here to this side. Let's position it here based on this 35.5 from that cube, and let's delete it. So this is what's called a block out, but it's based on actual numbers, and that's what matters. Now let's take that and add another edge loop here. Bring that over here to the left side, and we can then delete these faces here. Connect that. And on the right side, no, here on that side, let's continue by extruding that out a bit more. And then we can also position it here based on our reference. Let's do the same thing here by extruding that out. And then we take these faces, no vertex points, and use our quick lattice once again. And now the magic starts to unfold a bit. It's starting to make sense what we're up to here. We are establishing the magazine shaft. Now let's go over here and collapse the lattice. And we want to get rid of this little object there that always gets created when we do the lattice. And now I'm going to also take these edges and dissolve them. Remember, we want to keep it as basic as possible. Let's also delete that face there. And I'm going to add a cylinder instead. Put that radius to a 20 and the depth to 10. Leave it at 32 sides. Actually, I'm going to put the radius to 10. Rotate it over here 90 degrees on Y. And let's position this here and scale that further down. You can see my scaling numbers there at the bottom, but just make sure it's as close as it can be to our reference. We're going to slice that in half here, delete the left side. And now we already have another clue here for this. I'm going to join that together. Copy the x coordinates here from this piece and paste it onto that one. So that way, this is now on the same planar level, and we can then connect it over here by adding an edge. Take that edge and press F to fill. And then once again, a bit of manual work here involved with our vertex points. But first, let's add one here at the top. Let's copy the Z coordinate here from that vertex and paste it onto that one. And then with that selected, Control B and press V, V like Victor. And let's give that 2 segments here. Let me take these edges here, and I want to do a limited dissolve. Otherwise, it would also get rid of this vertex point. And we carry on by Control B plus V. You're going to see my segments in just a moment. Actually, let me undo that and first bring that a bit further down. Now we can go over here, and with the mouse wheel, we add our segments to it. And I have 7 segments here, which is what you can also put. So let's carry on here with this piece that's sticking out there at the front. And let's just make it simple by getting rid of these faces. And then we extrude it out again. And we're going to start here at this edge and then all the way there to the top. This is the part that is essentially sticking out. I extruded it, snap back, and then use the gizmo to position it over here. And now it's time to make another copy here for this reference. Rotate that 90 degrees on the y-axis. Let's take that into isolation together with the lower receiver. Zoom out and then position it so that you get this blueprint drawing that I found. You might have to press Shift. It's a little bit tricky to position it, I know. So I apologize if that looks a little bit weird, but you're going to find out how it works. Well, you already had to do it before. So now we have this positioned here as good as we can, and that gives us a good sense of how much this should come out there. And let's carry on here at the bottom. I am gonna also select this edge, and let's put that to 0 here on the x-axis. And then we're gonna connect it over here. I'm gonna make another alignment here with this extruded face and put that to 0. Drag more geometry out. And now we want to copy the z-axis from that point and paste it in there, okay? Now let's select everything and merge by distance on vertex mode. We have removed 2 vertices. You don't want to have more than 2 removed there, okay? So let's fill this here, and then we can dissolve this edge there to keep it clean. Later we are gonna make our connections properly, but as long as we're working on that, we don't want to have anything in the way that we don't really need. So we still have some more blockout work to do. Let's extrude that over and snap back, and I put it to 0 on X. And then I'm gonna also do the same here. Extrude, put to 0. Let's add a vertex point with Super Smart Create here. And we are gonna then take that vertex, copy the coordinate and paste it in there so that these are perfectly aligned. Let's fill that. And now let's do the extrusion again, snap back and put it to 0. So let's merge by distance again. I have another 2 vertices removed here because of that action. Or not removed, but welded. I'm gonna subdivide that. Copy the X coordinate here from this one. And then take these points and paste it on there so that this is also aligned. And then we connect it up here. So I'm gonna go over here to the other side again. And I just want to demonstrate a plugin to you. For that, I'm gonna delete these faces that we just did. Remember, we created it this way here. Extrude out. And then we made sure that this is aligned on the Z-axis. But I'm gonna delete that again now and show you how we can also do that with this plugin. So the plugin is called F2. And you can get it here on the Blender Extensions website. And the installer makes it really easy. You just go to Get Add-on and drag and drop it onto our Blender viewport, and it will automatically install. And let's just take a quick look here at our add-ons, make sure it's actually enabled. And that plugin, like the name suggests, is using the F key. But I just want to let you know that this doesn't mess up anything that you had previously on F, and most people have the fill on there. So this is going to remain the way that it is. Don't worry about it. And the beauty of this plugin is it works in combination with the mouse. So let me show you. So you can see that it created a quad, okay? Where by default, it's only creating a triangle. And that is a really nice feature to have. That's why I wanted to recommend that to you. Let's not forget that this is the actual right side of our lower receiver. And the one here is the left side. We just position it so that we see the upper part better. But let's work on that piece. We're gonna add a subdivision here. And this is gonna be the upper edge here from that element. And then let's go ahead and delete these faces. And then with vertex mode, we can just press F and make use of this plugin again. So now if you move that vertex, we see that it's not welded. Let me go over here to the options and let's put auto merge on, but I want to put it to a 0.1 millimeter threshold. Otherwise it might merge too much. Let's demonstrate it again here. And now you can see that this is properly welded. However, the parts that we did before we enabled it, they are not merged yet. So let's just make a selection in X-ray mode and merge by distance. Remember, you always see at the bottom how much I actually merged. Let's take these vertex here and let's drag it down a bit. Now let's make a loop selection and subdivide it. And let's spread that out a little bit here further to the side. And then we can continue to extrude out these faces like so. That requires a little bit of cleanup work. Let me turn the mirror off, otherwise it's getting confusing. This might look a little bit weird, but it's going to make sense in a moment. I'm going to delete these faces. So we're left only with that here. And let's align that on the y-axis as y and 0. And then we take these vertex points together and say as z and 0. So let's bring that down a bit. And now we got some funky geometry here. Let's delete the vertex, not dissolve, but delete. And this one here we can then dissolve. So that leaves us here with that element extending out there in the center. I'm gonna make a perfectly vertical cut here with our knife tool and connect it with Super Smart Create. I just made that connection. And now let's add a cylinder. And let's put that to a 15 millimeter radius and a 50 millimeter depth. And I'm gonna give it 48 sides and rotate it 90 on the y-axis. And that gives us a good starting base here for our trigger guard. I just scaled it down a little bit further. Make sure it's matching our reference. And I'm gonna then, same as before, slice it. And I'm gonna give it a bit of a bevel, just a little bit. And that enables us to reuse the other side and just drag it over like that. So this is going to serve as our Boolean operator once again. However, I want to align that better. So I'm going to go over here to our snap and put that to vertex mode. Our snap base is put to closest. I'm just going to show you here my settings so you have it same as me. And now with that enabled, we can then put our gizmo right there. And that gives us perfectly here this alignment that we want. So we're gonna position that here according to our reference. And let me put the mirror on. And let's go over here to difference for the Boolean, but let's put it to exact. This is one of these cases where we have too many open faces, so it needs to be put to exact, and then we can confirm this Boolean operation. Let me switch over to our knife tool, and I will then simply cut vertically down here. And here on that side, let's also use the knife tool. Let's use the vertex that's already there in place to snap it against on both sides. And now we go over here to face mode and we can just delete that. Let's fill that. Make the loop selection and fill it. That gives us a good starting base here. And I'm going to dissolve these edges here that we don't really need. And that we can simply connect over here instead. So that way we don't have these edges so close by each other. I'm gonna select all of these edges here, the complete loop. Use Shift. And then we're gonna add a subdivision in there, which should be right in the center then at X0. And it's not 100% there, so I'm just gonna enter 0 in there. Connect that, and also on the other side. And then let's take a look at it here in our back view, isolate it, and let's just delete the right side. So far, we're keeping it symmetrical. So we didn't collapse anything yet for one or the other side. We're working on it as long as we can while we can use our mirror from time to time. Let me take these faces here, and I actually want to delete them. We're gonna make that better looking in a moment. But there was too much clutter there, which we don't really need. And now we have a better starting base here. Based on that, let's extrude, snap back. And I still have snapping on. I'm gonna turn that off. And now with that selection, let's press S, Y, and 0 to align that. And now we have a lot of edges that we can dissolve. So I'm gonna go over here to X-ray. Take it up until there. You might have to pause the video and just double check that you have still a few edges left there at the top. And the reason for that is that now in vertex mode, we can then just manually get that other shape worked in there that we see there. This is where the pistol grip is going into, or wrapping around, I should say. Let me zoom in a bit. And then the last vertex, let's also make use of that. And now I'm gonna switch over to edge mode because you see we have this big edge here. I'm gonna use Super Smart Create to put a vertex in the center, and I'm gonna weld it over here to the other vert and make that connection here. So that way we now have this merged together here. You can say welding or merge. Remember, we still have auto merge on. And that enables us to snap and at the same time weld. It's the same as target welding in 3D Max. So I made another extrusion, snap it back, drag it out, and then S plus X plus 0. And this particular edge here, we can just dissolve. So let me dissolve that. And now let's put that to a 0 here. Here's another use case for our F2 plugin, just to get that quad in there real quick. And that one we can just fill. So I'm gonna put the mirror back on. And that's basically it here for our third hour and working on the lower receiver. More to come.